again, everyone. Keta Kosman, publisher of Madison's Lumber Report. So it's the beginning of July, and data for the timber economy of North America has come out May and April for some of it. And so now I'm able to show you what is going on the ground for the feedstock of the sawmills which make the lumber that is the price and market data I report every week. Madison's Lumber Reporter, published out of Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, since 1952. I'm the third owner. And so because the past couple of years have been quite a lot of questions because people are trying to figure out where is the industry landing after all of that volatility and the turmoil from 2020 to 2022 when we had the changes to society from COVID and we had the interruption of transportation in British Columbia from the atmospheric river, which brought a complete halt to lumber movement for almost 6 months. So now we see, if you watched my last video that I just posted, that the lumber prices are leveling off, evening out. It's become a nice moderate up and down seasonal cycle throughout every year since 2023 of about $150 per thousand board feet up and down, providing ability for the sawmills to plan. However, the sales volume, the demand is still quite sluggish. We had expected, most people had expected that US housing would recover this year, and it has not. In July of 2025, there is improvement in housing starts, but it's really looking quite flat. At least it's not down. That's something, but it's not improving to the degree, certainly, of the population. The pent-up demand for home buying in the US is documented very well and is definitely going to bring the need for more housing starts at this point, unquestionably next year in 2026, if not later this year, and for a few years. The experts on the housing data are saying 2026 to 2028 will be pretty good years for new housing construction, as all of those people who are becoming first-time home buyers, turning 30 years old, turning 35 years old, will be entering into the market, which will of course bring an increase to lumber manufacturing, lumber sales, potentially lumber prices. We'll see. First, the volumes will come up before the prices increase to any significant amount. So let's look at some of the data right now, and I'll show you where we are in Canada and the US with the timber harvest, the log sale, log export, lumber sale, and lumber export to give an idea of the bigger picture and potentially what expectations could be for the rest of this year. But most people now in forest industry are looking to next year, 2026. Starting at the bottom of the value chain, we have logs. This is US log exports from 2021 to May of 2025. The purple line is to the world. The increase in 2021 was following the changes to society and imposing of social distancing at manufacturing facilities caused an increase in log export while the lumber manufacturers were adjusting. And so the 2023 and 2024 are almost even, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens toward the end of this year. Comparing to date 2025 to 1 year ago, the U.S. log export to the world is down almost 15%. I would hope that those logs are going to U.S. sawmills, given the conversations that are happening regarding Canadian lumber import into the U.S. And there should be an higher degree of U.S. consumption of domestic logs at those mills rather than that being exported to other countries. And just to point out real quick the scale, because this is going to be important for the coming up graphs, the top of this scale is $1.3 billion. And then now we have Canadian log exports. This is literally comparing apples to apples because the HS codes for these commodities have been standardized. And you can see there the teal line is to the world. Similar situation of an increase from 2021 and then leveling off for the past couple of years. And we have to date for May of 2025, Canadian export of logs to the world down almost 7%. Once again, the scale, the top line of this graph is Canadian $500 million or half of a billion. Moving up the value chain, we now have lumber, and the purple line is export to the world, higher in 2021 and 2022 and leveling off the past couple of years. And then we have so far for this year to May, compared to 1 year ago, U.S. lumber export to the world down almost 32%, led by a drop to China, slight increase to Japan. Once again, note the scale. The top line here is the same as for the U.S. logs at US $1.3 billion. Don't miss out. Subscribe today. Your colleagues and competitors are already using the fabulous Madison's Lumber Reporter price dashboard. Okay, and then this is where it starts to get really interesting because it is U.S. lumber imports. And please note the top of the scale is $14 billion. Okay, so the amount of lumber coming into the U.S. by far exceeds the amount of logs or the amount of lumber that the U.S. is exporting. And once again, we have those drops from 2021 and 2022 to the past couple of years as things were slowing down, as I described earlier. And so what we have for year to date 2025 compared to the same time last year is U.S. lumber export to the world up more than 4%, led often by Europe. I know that the increase to China is higher, but that is generally speaking lower grade lumber. It is not construction framing. It is for other purposes, so utility grade. And then also the U.S. exports to Chile have increased almost 30% for January to May 2025 compared to the same time last year. All right, and this graph is Canada lumber production, the blue bars, and sawmill sales, the red line. So you can see there from 2020 and 2021 how those incredible price increases that were causing such a shock, but the production volume did not particularly change. This is not the best for the sawmilling industry. In order for them to have stability, it's better to have higher sales volumes and a more stable price. That way, everyone can plan and make adjustment to changes incrementally rather than having big shocks and massive volatility. So then here we show toward the right, January to April 2025, the production volumes dropped slightly, almost 7%, but the sales did increase almost 7%, indicating a little bit of a price increase so far this year compared to the same time last year. So now this is data that we look at all the time here at Madison's. My company, I'm the third owner, was started in 1952 in Vancouver, British Columbia. Every week we publish the market price FOB mill for 500 individual softwood lumber and panel commodity prices across North America. But we also look at much other information to try to figure out what is happening for the forest industry and the lumber manufacturers. And the picture has been difficult to understand over the last few years. There's been a lot of changes, as you can see by the graphs that I just showed you, and now coming into what people are hoping that they will be able to understand is the new situation. And in the context of the data that I just showed you with the graphs of the different volume and all of the ups and downs, is currently the reduction of manufacturing. The sawmills are curtailed. The capacity utilization rates are low, are lower than optimal, are lower than maximum for what these mills can produce on a weekly, monthly, annual basis. Meaning there's a lot of room for more wood to be made in the future as demand increases. What is the ability of those mills to get logs is always the question. And so we are in quite an interesting time right now, as President Trump has, at the beginning of this year, ordered two data reports for what is the availability of timber on the Bureau of Land Management and U.S. Forest Service lands, the underutilized forest that is not in the private timberland basket, which has been until now the only source for logs at the mill. At least when I say until now, I mean for the past 25, 30 years. Prior to that, there was timber harvest in the public lands. And then the second one is a study of the viability of the U.S. to be able to manufacture all of its lumber domestically. Both of these reports are due later this year. So, which is very, very interesting, because this is data that we should have always had. It should have always been something normal to study. And Canada needs this too. I'm not just talking about how things are changing in America. The loss of merchantable timber to fire, to pest, to weather, being knocked down by storms, age is enormous, and it has not been quantified. So very curious to see what comes out of these two reports to be submitted to President Trump later this year. For now, we have the usual data that has been reported monthly between Canada and the US this whole time. And then, of course, the other thing, as I said in my previous video just now, what is going to happen with US housing, and when that starts to pick up again, where is that wood going to come from? Which mills in Canada and the US. So it's a very interesting time, lots to digest now, and as this year goes on. And so if you like what you see here, click like, so this video will get recommended to other viewers. Subscribe here on YouTube so you'll be notified when we make another video. And if you need to see more than just the small snapshot of the few prices that I show you here on YouTube or we post on the website, in the caption here is a link to fill out a form and get a sample. And then you can see what the commodity items are that we track and what the price is for that week. And we will also send you the market commentary explaining why those prices are changing. That is all what my customers log into on the dashboard to see every week when we make the updates on Thursday night.